All right, time to get into now the spellcasters, ideal wizard and the ideal cleric. Now I'm going to break these two up into two different ideas. So cleric, I'm going to focus. He's going to primarily be defensive in nature, so because he's healer, and so that said, I'm going to focus on the wizard now, in this video, and he's going to be primarily offensive. So I'm going to have like the wizard with stats, like as I'm going to have like a nifty character sheet handy, just to kind of get my thoughts in order with the abilities and stuff and everything. So now, strength, dexterity, and constitution are pretty much, you could say, irrelevant to wizard. So you could pretty much do like an 8 strength, 10 dexterity, 10 constitution. Intelligence is going to be the primary focus. Now I'm kind of in a sense like a big fan of Jack and their people or characters primary attribute up to 18 to start with, so you have a good foundation, so you can bump, like when you get to level 4 you can bump that up to 20, or like depending on your class you start off with 20. Like for instance, if you like getting back to the barbarian, if you did that typical half orc barbarian, 18 strength, they have a +2 to strength, so you jack it up to like a 20, so you have that +5 modifier. Now, my justification behind that is so that way characters, especially at lower levels, have that much better chance of like surviving to the higher levels and everything. So this is why I justified jacking stuff up to 18. So now I'm going to assume that you're probably going to the stereotypical elf that doesn't necessarily get the plus to intelligence, but you could do anything. So yes, we're talking about wizards. Hey, so you're going to be the familiar, huh? Yeah, perfect familiar right there. Anyway, 18 intelligence, so that way, you are already off to a good start, so you don't necessarily have to at level 4 you can right off the bat raise your intelligence to 20, so that way at levels 8, 12, 16, and 20 you can use your ability score increase on other things. So like for instance, 18 intelligence to start with, like a 8 strength, 10 dexterity, 10 constitution, 18 intelligence. I would say 14 wisdom, because like maybe he's a little wiser as well. 10 to 12 charisma, because the charisma isn't necessarily as important for a wizard, so you could probably 10 and not have like a too overpowered character. So now with intelligence, like with that out of the side, now concentrate on spells. Now being primary and offensive type of spellcaster, because I'm going to when I get into the cleric next week, I'm going to explain why they're defensive and everything. So now with the spells, what you want to do with the wizard and start off with spells that you can be in offensive mind is the evocation class. The stuff like magic missile, Melf's acid arrow, chain lightning, fireball, and all those spells that can let you deal as a wizard massive amounts of damage and everything. So of course once you first start out you're only going to have stuff pretty much I cast magic missile, boom 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 boom. And now the thing is a way around to get around the limit of your spell slots is you could have the wizard be able to write scrolls and everything. So have him have maybe a spell book or a binder that's dedicated to just being able to write down scrolls and everything. So that's another way that he could increase his spell capacity. So for instance, you get imagine writing 10 scrolls or magic missile. So you're pretty much you pull out a piece of paper and just boom, magic missile, and then you pull out the second one, boom, and that way you can actually save your spell slots and your spell casting, those actual slots for later in the game, or if you're doing the traditional dungeon crawl at the beginning, maybe you're checking out the sewers or something. That's where stuff scrolls and stuff would come in handy. So the wizard being like I said, offensive in mind, can actually sit there and in a sense be a second or third sniper behind the ranger and the rogue. And of course now of course I say second sniper behind the ranger lets the rogue do his flanking ability to do a sneak attack. And now of course most people are going to concentrate on there'll be two flabbergasted, like, oh wait, we got this huge ass half orc barbarian charging us, and we got this heavily clad armor clad paladin charging us as well. Wait, we've got this like we're getting these missiles like arrows from the ranger's bow, and these magical missiles from like the wizard, and of course like who to concentrate on. So that would add into like in a sense like an extra ranged attacker as well behind the ranger, and which would in a sense help the barbarian and paladin, who are primary melee fighters and basically are the ones that will charge into battle. And like now you have ranger and wizard as snipers. Now in non-combat uh, um, encounters like with puzzles and riddles and stuff, with having such a high intelligence, you as like a PC may not necessarily have like be good at solving riddles. Like I suck at riddles myself, so like but you could sit there and actually use like maybe intelligence and like going down into insight, or like it's insight is wisdom based. So like but like you could sit there and like finagle it. So like, oh hey, look, I might have insight into like riddles because like as a wizard, I've gone to an academy or university, like the equivalent of like today's college, and so now I have like a shit ton of knowledge up in my head. So maybe I can finagle to do like a intelligence insight role instead of a wisdom based. So that's like a way you can kind of tweak the abilities, and so like the same kind of concept like with intimidate. Intimidate is like primarily a charisma based skill, but a barbarian could say like, hey, look, I want to intimidate someone, but like I want to use strength. And so it's like use a bar. You could just there like a steel bar and bend it. That's another way you can like get, in a sense, bend abilities. So now primarily, yes, you're going to want to like say like for instance, insight is wisdom based. So you're going like but again, like insight might not necessarily be completely wisdom based. Like in the example that I gave, it could be intelligence based. So that's where the wizard can come in handy in non-combat encounters when when you're out in adventure and everything. And of course, a great way for like the wizard to also shine in non-combat situations is if like people are like, if the party themselves are researching stuff for their next adventure. This is where like the wizard can come in handy, and like, oh hey, look, I know like the bunch of the people in this like mages guild, or like this academy, or like I have like they would be able to like in a sense use their intelligence and like a knowledge base. Like think of like the Fellowship of the Rings, when Gandalf is riding off to like Gondor to do research on the One Ring and everything. That's probably like one of the prime examples that you can think of when the wizard shines in a non-combat role and everything. So of course, like I said, Gandalf is probably like one of the best wizards that you could use to kind of draw upon for like a wizard character. And of course, there's other ones that you could pull upon as well. So like Merlin from the King Arthur Legends is another prime example of wizards. So like someone who's highly intelligent, very knowledgeable, and is able to and you have to kind of be that way to be able to harness the arcane arts and everything. And so now I'm saying primarily focusing on evocation school to be the offensive wizard, but you can also branch off into like the other like schools as well. Like think of like in the Marvel movies and with Doctor Strange. Think of how he can like create like that'd be a great inspiration on how to create different spells. Like he can create like this shields and like maybe magical disc that he can throw, or like the butterfly spell that he used against Thanos or something. So those are ideas on like how you could like kind of tweak spells and like maybe expand upon like the wizard and how he could use his like arcane knowledge to quite possibly not only make like scrolls and everything, but research new spells and or like quite possibly make a lot of different magical items like wands and rods and stuff like that to expand his spell casting abilities even further. So like of course like now you can see that with those options, the floodgates are pretty much are let go and wide open, and lets the waters rush on in to like the limitless potential that like wizards have. And now of course it's kind of like Now, traditionally, like you kind of get the sense that like early on, like your fighting classes are the more powerful ones, but as you progress in level, it kind of gets flip flopped, and now your spellcasters are starting to become more powerful, especially once they start getting up into the higher levels, like fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth levels. So that's where they start to shine, is the higher levels, and of course they still like, especially the wizard. Uh, with the concentration, they might need to be able to focus like their hand movements, like I'm doing, or they might need to be able to have the concentration to speak, or use like the items and stuff, like depending on the components that their spell they're casting. So they might need that. They still need like the rest of the group to kind of keep threats occupied, so they can, in a sense, have enough time to be able to cast their spells to still be effective. So that's why this ideal party continues. And I've gone through like the barbarian, the paladin, the ranger, and the rogue, and now I'm doing the wizard. And then next week I'll get the cleric, and I'm going to concentrate more on like the defensive mind, because like I said, he's pretty much the healer. So like again, today is all about the ideal wizard, and I'm focusing him mainly on offensive, so that way he can still cast those like famous spells, like everyone knows the meme, like I didn't ask how big the room was, I said I cast fireball. So that's your stereotypical like wizard's phrase, and that's in a sense why I'm focusing him more on being an offensive type of spellcaster rather than a defensive. But the option is always up to you as the player.